Hi, my name is Kaitlin-Ann Mulligan. I'm going to be telling you about Filipino eating habits. As a Filipina, I thought this would be a very interesting topic to research, so we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. So, a small introduction, the Philippines is an island, but it also contains about 7,000 other islands. We're divided into several major regions, and we are influenced by a lot of other cultures and countries. So, brief history. Filipino cuisine is increasingly more in demand in the past couple years due to its spices and flavorfulness that is typically different from other Asian cuisines. So, brief timeline. In 3400 BC, we see the first evidence of rice in the Cagayan Valley. This was brought to the Philippines during the Indo-Malaysia, Chinese, and Vietnamese wave of migration. And then we see the Chinese in the 2nd century AD, so early 1200s to 1300s. We begin to trade with them, so adopting styles of stir-fry methods, so cooking methods, as well as dipping sauces. And then we move on to future trade, and then we could see revolutionizing from Spain in the late 1800s and the guerrilla war between Filipinos and Americans in the early 1900s, and then us adopting American culture later on. So, a map of influences. We were first influenced by Malaysia and China, and then continued on to Spain around March 16, 1521, and then Northern America later on in the late 1800s to early 1900s. So, Filipino eating in a nutshell, we have about 5 quote-unquote meals, so 3 main courses, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as well as in-between snacks called meriendas. So those 2 snacks are in between each of those. So overnutrition, about 20% of our population is undernutritioned, which means quite a great deal just because we eat so much, but we're eating so poorly that we don't get the exact nutrients we need. Less than 5-year-olds, there's about 30% who are underweight, and this is mainly because before colonialization, a lot of the eating was required for hard labor and not so much for office work. This wasn't really a problem back then, but it's starting to become a problem now. We used to be able to burn off calories very quickly in the fields, and rich foods were less available. But now we have so much food at our disposal, and we have office jobs, so we can't really balance the two just yet. The Philippines is unique because it's not the only place in the Pacific Islands that has this problem, but we are the worst. More than 90% of the population is actually overweight. So trying to balance this off with a zero waste policy, so over 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted each year, according to the Food and Agricultural Organization from 2011. Each Filipino wastes on average about 3.29 kilograms a year, according to Food Nutrition Research Institute of Department of Science and Technology. After 2 years, 10 villages have achieved full compliance with the 2009 Waste Management Law. How we kind of started this process was in Alaminos, Philippines, with the Republic Act 9003, and it was in 2000 when the Philippines passed this act. According to the law, the public elected councils of all 39 villages in Alaminos City must implement a comprehensive solid waste management plan. So the law mandates that each village construct a recycling center, separate garbage, create a village composting system, and collect different types of waste separately. They also outlaw open burning and uncontrolled dump sites. And in August 2009, Gaia, the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, proposed a partnership with the city. And the following month, Zero Waste Alaminos was born. This supplied at least 5 villages to be almost completely zero waste. 10 villages are in the works and are very close to that. So we're making progress. So types of protein. We see 2 here, mainly because they're our main sources, but we also have 2 others that weren't listed. So seafood was very popular as a result of the mass amounts of water we're surrounded by. The common way of eating this is to have it salted, pan-fried, or deep-fried. Pork meat was often raised for offerings to the gods. Pigs are considered indigenous to our land because they were already here before colonization occurred. According to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, a Filipino consumes about 14.2 kilograms of pork, which is 2 more than the world's average pork consumption. Pork is used because it's cheaper than seafood and it's cheaper than chicken. Chicken was also indigenous to us and was also used as offerings. It came in behind pork just because we consume about 11.6 kilograms. And then beef follows with about 3 kilograms of consumption. This wasn't listed on here because it's not our main source, just because the first cattle came into the Philippines during the Spanish settlement in Mexico, trying to conquer us in the late 1500s. So by early 1600s, only 24 ranches existed in the main city of Manila. Dining etiquette. So we see 2 styles, kamayan and utensils. Kamayan means literally eating with your hands. It originated from budol fight from the U.S. Army. The concept of budol fighting is a militaristic style of eating where all food is spread out on a table covered with banana leaves, and eaters stand basically shoulder to shoulder and try to stuff their face as fast as they could. The fight refers to the act of grabbing and eating as much as a soldier can before the food runs out. So if you're slow, you definitely won't have food. Older generations associate budol fight with violence that came with American militarization. However, current generations see budol fight as a celebration of Filipino culture and offer this as a Filipino food experience. So we typically see large groups eating this style, kind of in celebration of camaraderie. So we move on to utensils. The main reason is because when Americans came, they further influenced us to use utensils because they saw that eating with hands was unhygienic and barbaric, and it wasn't something you typically do. So it was considered a taboo to them. When using your hands, you typically avoid using your left hand, which is kind of hard to do. So adopting the 2 main utensils would be the fork and the spoon. So the fork used to hold down the food, the spoon to scoop up or cut our food. We generally make our meat very tender, so you could cut it easily with a spoon instead of a knife. This is our main source of eating if we don't do the Kamayan style. Like I said, the Americans had introduced or basically tried to further instill this concept to us in 1950s with a book like Susie Butt's Housekeeping, a textbook guide for girls in public intermediate schools in the Philippines, which outlined how to properly, quote unquote, be citizens and how to eat with utensils. not just for special occasion, but as an everyday lifestyle. Utensils were valuable and expensive because they were made out of precious metals, so they served pretty much as a social status. Um, Typically, the poorest used the Kamayan style, and the richest of the population used utensils. So why rice? Why do we eat so much rice? Rice is our main staple of food. We use it with every meal. If we don't have it with a meal, then it's considered a snack. We're the world's ninth largest producer of rice. It supplies our economy as well as our stomachs, um, accounting for about 2.8% of global rice production. So about 2010, I believe, we became the world's largest rice importer because we couldn't keep up with how much rice we were exporting. We needed to import some back. So rice accounts for 25% of food expenditures of the poorest 30% of our population, according to Securing Rice, Reducing Poverty, Sebastian 2006. Rice employs about 2.5 million households, broken down into 2.1 million farmers. And this is according to Global Cost and Price Competitiveness of the Philippines by El Gonzalez in 2013 for a Statistics Office 2006 survey. Rice purchases make up about 12 to 20% of total food expenditures of our population. So dipping sauces. These are considered add-ons. We have dipping sauces to enhance flavor. We don't put as much, even though our food is already flavorful. We don't put them on our meals. We put them to the side because while cooking, we constantly consider the people who will be eating it. So some people won't like those dipping sauces, so we want to go ahead and provide it on the side so that everyone can eat the way that they want to. Sao or sausawan literally means a place to dip food in, which is supposed to refer to the small plate, but instead we use it to describe the actual dipping sauce content. So yeah, moving on, food as a reflection of our culture. So we mix sour, sweet, salty in all our meals. You could see this with our very famous dessert, halo halo, which is ice cream, corn, kidney beans, and flan, among other things like caramel and taro. You could also see it in our chocolate rice puddings when we put kind of sardines into our chocolate rices. I'll be eating adobo, which is also a very popular meal or food in Filipino culture. It's typically very salty, and I'll balance that off with a sweet sticky rice, which is what we call puto. So you could see this very common in Filipino cuisine. Moving on, so food culture refers to practices, attitudes, and beliefs, as well as networks and institutions surrounding the production, distribution, and consumption of food. Filipino food is a fusion of Euro-Asian ingredients. It combines Spaniard, Asian, and American cultures to add on to our original flavors and recipes. We see this reflected in tradition. When Spaniards came to the Philippines and conquered us, they converted about 90% of the Filipinos into Roman Catholic belief. So Christianity and Catholicism avoid eating meat during Lent, meaning they can't really eat any lamb meat on Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, and all Fridays of Lent. However, the first Sunday of January, families will gather and eat pork as a celebration of Lent being done. We also get outside cultures such as the Chinese culture influencing us. So noodles symbolize prosperity, good luck, and long life. The longer the noodle, the better. Noodles are generally not broken or cut while they're being cooked. We also see this in what we wear, so the color red for good luck on birthdays and New Year's, not just global New Year's, but Chinese New Year's as well. We consider doing things the way we want to, so there's no originality per se, so there's no authenticity as well. We kind of make things our own. Moving on to social. So Filipinos highly value eating with friends, families, and colleagues. So with any company, eating alone is pretty unusual, um, which shows how socially important meals are. We use this to pass tradition of culture because we believe that sharing food fosters social relationships. No matter what time of the day, you could be offered food among walking into someone's household. So kumain ka na means have you eaten yet? It's a very common greeting by the host when entering someone's house. Eating a lot is seen as a compliment, but not eating enough or not eating as much is kind of insulting to the host. When we're offered food, we typically refuse the first time to seem polite, but we'll go ahead and accept it the second time. We also will leave a small portion of the food on the plate if we're full because we believe in gathering more food first, so we don't have to keep coming up for seconds or rounds, and we don't want to seem ungrateful for the food, so you'll never see the plate empty. And moving on to our sources, so I listed a couple here, I also mentioned a couple early on, but that is it. Thank you.